All right, guys, are we broadcasting? Can you hear me? All right. Don't think we're quite broadcasting yet. There we go.
Can you hear me? I don't seem to have a video. I
Well,
apologize.
broadband.
I can hear you.
That's yeah. I'm gonna jump out and come back in, see if that works.
Okay.
I love the internet.
All right. Well, as we wait for Paula to jump back on, we have our planning and zoning meeting with the planning and zoning board. So let me find participants. I'm going to start promoting folks. Carolyn, George. Wish I could just promote everybody. Mr. Diem. New kid, Mr. Waller. Sumner, I've heard of you. And then I have somebody calling in. I'm going to just assume that you're supposed to be promoted, the 945-4490. Oh, I don't know if I can promote somebody who's. If you're calling in on the phone, I don't see that I can promote you to a panelist. It looks like I'm just able to allow you to talk. So if you raise your hand, I might not see it. So I'll try to toggle back, or somebody else sees it. Just please raise your hand. So you're allowed to talk anytime, 945-4490, that it becomes convenient. Hopefully you're not Zoom bombing us. Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Smith, I'm just listening in. You need not promote me. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I will absolutely demote you.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know if I can remove you, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. All right. Well, this is our first meeting of March work session. This is one I've been looking forward to a long time with P&Z. So, gosh, Marco, I guess take it away. You are muted.
I just exclaimed me, but yes, I can do that. Well, hello, everybody. Good to see you all. I and my commissioners, we kind of went over a few things last meeting that we feel like we do want to talk about. And commissioners, please raise your hand anytime to help me out here, because I have on the email that Gretchen sent out, I have 4 items, and looking at these 4 items, to me, what it almost comes down to is, and this is an internal thing for the P&Z, but I would love to start our workshops again, and I was told that we will do so. So I'm excited for that. The 4 items that I have, I don't know if council saw it. It was mainly starting a discussion about the downtown core, how we are going to maintain the vitality, and how we are going to prohibit ground floor office uses, surface parking lots, and how we are going to retain retail and small businesses. That was on top of my list, because I know this is something we've all wanted to talk about for a while. And now that we see the elevator shafts going up, I think it reminds us that this is something we do need to talk about. Also, housing ideas, public and private partnerships. I think we just want to hear an update every once in a while to see how this is coming along. And one thing that some of us raised was we would, as a planning commission, not so much as a zoning commission, As some of you know, zoning is more of a policing of our code, what's going on and what is being done and is not being done, or what should be done. But we would love to be a bigger part of the planning aspect for Glenwood Springs. We want to be a planning commission. We want to help out with visionary stuff and bring our, I don't know, put our best foot forward and let all of our visions come together. I think we're a pretty good team for these kind of things. And I think saying these three things, it kind of ultimately comes down to maybe a comprehensive plan update. And I know that staff is working on reading through the comp plan to pick out some areas that may need immediate attention and some areas that can wait a little longer, so we don't have to do a full overhaul of the comp plan. But that's kind of the things that we wrote down and we came up with as a commission. And if there's anybody from the commission that would like to add some details to this, please go ahead. Or if council wants to jump in and say, good idea, bad idea, add this to that or whatever, let us know. We always listen. We sometimes don't hear, but we always listen.
Go ahead, guys. It's kind of free for all. Open up. Well, I guess I'll start by saying, Marco, thank you so much. I know your service on this board and commission, what is it? It's one of the two, is really helpful. I know Ingrid speaks really highly of working with you for the last 5 years. I guess I won't speak for her, but I appreciate the partnership. I appreciate everybody on this commission. I think you help us out so much when we read your recommendations and findings. It's very rare, although it has happened on occasion, it's very rare that we go against you guys' recommendation because it is really well thought out. Whether we agree politically, I don't know that we can ever disagree technically. So I'm really excited, Marco and the rest of the commission, to take a look at some of these, to not transition you into, but to kind of let you fly a bit with the planning and to look at this town. You guys are developers, you guys, have your pulse on a lot of this. And I'm really looking forward to a lot of these recommendations outside of just interpreting code. So that's my 2 cents. Charlie, then Shelley, then Ingrid.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, Marco and other members of the commission, you're one of the boards that's probably spent almost as much time as we do in meetings, and I appreciate that time frame because it's a heck of a dedication of time to the benefit of the city and the citizens. So I want to thank you for your service. Some of you are new. Thank you for joining the board and helping out. I appreciate it as well. I'll go through the 4 things that Marco outlined that are in the Gretchen's memo to us. So I agree. I think we need to look at downtown development and what's the best way to continue to promote active retail space and other uses downtown, and a concept of preserving the ground floor of buildings for retail, to me, is appealing. I think it's something we need to study to see what impact that may have on redevelopment of existing properties downtown that may need redevelopment. Those are the kind of things I think that's one of the things I think you need to look to. And you guys probably have better ideas than that as to other things you need to look to when you're examining that issue. I think public-private partnerships with housing is very important. It's certainly going to become an issue or a topic of discussion as we look at the A Street Crossing development and potential other developments, and might be ways that we can work with developers under the ordinance. I think we're having second reading tonight, if I remember correctly, for the affordable housing component when you have larger development. So I absolutely think any ideas you can give us to how to develop that further is going to be helpful. I'm going to jump to number 4, which is a comprehensive plan. As you may know, but there's going to be a topic of discussion today about airport and how do we use that property. Maybe it's going to stay at airport, maybe it's not, but I think the comprehensive plan should look at that South Glenwood area and determine, what would be if it's not an airport, what would be the use of that property, it's going to be mixed airport and other uses, what would be the compatible uses out there. I also think it's important that we look at, oh heck, I had one just dropped my brain. One of the big issues, you know, I addressed this earlier today with someone else, and that is there's been a lot of conversation over the last couple of years since I got in council about, do we have any more growth? Do we say no more growth? Do we say no more housing? Is there a limit to the amount of housing and or growth that the Glenwood Springs can economically undertake in the future? And how's the best way to proceed forward with future growth to make sure that we can provide the appropriate city services and things like that? I think that's part of the things that I think we need to look at in the comprehensive plan. And again, you all probably have a bunch of other ideas that are appropriate. Some of those may include, you know, downtown development and redevelopment of those areas. Of course, the other areas that we have to look at in the future is, as I mentioned already, the A Street crossing, and then the other is the future of the West Glenwood Springs mall area. And it's under Urban Renewal Authority, and how do we best address that? So those are all areas I think you can help us on. So that gets back, I guess, to the third issue, which I think is important. I think everybody in this council, and they can speak for themselves, but we think you're participating in planning for the future of this community is really important. I think it's important to continue to move forward and to look at long-range planning and not short-sighted. What do we do? What's right in front of us today? And how do we do long-term planning? So anything you can help us with in that process, it's valuable input to me as a council member. So thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Shelley.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. And yeah, Marco, I like the 4 items that you guys brought to us. And so I didn't know, I'm very interested in hearing from the commission too. So I was going to suggest that maybe we go through each of those 4 items kind of and have a little back and forth, find out what you guys are thinking. But I agree with Charlie. I'd love to see you guys do more planning, especially if you want to do that. We'd love to hear from you. And I think that's certainly part of the role. And then I am the liaison to the Housing Commission. So if you'd like an update on where we're at kind of working on partnerships and public-private, I could do that now if you want. Can I do that? Yeah. Or you
Sure.
wanna wait?
Please.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the Housing Commission, and as you know, you guys passed and we're working on that inclusionary housing code. So thank you very much for getting that on the books. And I think it's the full intent of council is that you guys will spend the next 3 to 4 months actually fine tuning that and, you know, making it a workable ordinance and a workable piece of code. So that's one thing that I'm certainly hoping that P&Z will be involved in. And then as far as the housing section, you know, we have identified 2 pieces of land that the Housing Commission is moving forward on trying to develop kind of the scope for a pilot project that would be basically, I think, envisioned as a public-private partnership, some type of housing where the city puts up the land and then we figure out the rest. So the Housing Commission has put some ideas together on that. And then actually Hannah Klausman, who's the staff to the Housing Commission, and Ellen Dole, who's also on the commission. We are taking part in training that's put on by the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, and it's called the Housing Equity Campaign. It's part of their housing development series. And it's actually going to walk us through that whole development process. And the timing is really good on this pilot project because it's going to walk us through kind of defining our mission and vision for the project, affordable housing sort of 101, putting those partnerships together, site feasibility, building our dream development team, you know, what that might look like, who the partners might be. and then go through the public process versus also bringing in community engagement and then building that community support and then actually getting that project defined. So that's something we're going through. I think it goes until May 18th. It's like an 8-week process. So we're hoping to come out of that with a better vision and definition of what we want this project to be so that we can bring it back to council. And, you know, P&Z could be part of that also to see where we're going with that project and get input. So that's on that piece of it. And I'm open to discussion on the other ones. So thanks.
Ingrid.
Okay, perfect. So my questions, I was actually kind of hoping for more of a little back and forth, get feedback. And so I have a handful of questions, and if you guys are comfortable with the format and jump in once I ask them, is that cool? Okay. So I'm going to kind of go back and just ask, we had our code revision that went into place in the summer of 2018. How's it working? How do you guys feel? How's it functioning? How's it using, you know, with the land use? How effective do you feel like it is?
Commissioners, go for it.
Muted him.
Yeah, some of you keep like muting, unmuting, like popping in and off.
Yeah, how's that?
That's
I know.
perfect. Nope, lost you again.
There you go.
We're finding that it's evolving
Good.
as we get different requests. We're finding, hey, we overlooked this. We need to fine tune. Well, I think you were there with variances. So I guess my perception is, as a whole, it's working. But that's a WHOLE. But we're finding a lot of holes, HOLE, that we either overlooked or didn't apply. And I imagine that's going to keep happening for a while.
Sure. Okay. And you touched on variances. That's one of my questions, because that was kind of when I was one of you, that was a big thing for me. Where are we with that? I think that's a good question for Jen as well as the rest of you guys.
And just as a point of order, if everybody wants to just unmute themselves, as long as there's not stuff in the background, and just kind of like give a little hand wave, and that lets you know you're about to talk. I think that helps with this a little bit more than recognizing everybody. So go ahead.
Jen, where are we on that? Did that go to council, the issue of variances?
We haven't seen it yet.
Okay,
It has not, because
coming.
we wanted to bring all of the code revisions together,
Right.
and we lost our quorum in the middle of the meeting last time, and so we had to set it over. But Carl did say that if it couldn't be taken up at the next meeting, that it was going to move forward to city council regardless. We have had the public hearing, which is the requirement in the code. So,
And just so you guys know, I knew that already because I had that was me like, hey, let's get caught up here.
Jen, was that the last part of the code revisions that we skipped to? That was it. That was the final puzzle piece. Okay.
We didn't want to bring in piecemeal, like try to figure out which pieces there had been a full recommendation on or not. We just wanted to bring everything all together to city council, which I hope that city council appreciates too, so that you don't have to, figure out the codes at several meetings in a row.
Just real quick, Ingrid, you were there, I think, still when we did the design standard variance adjustments. So that's been done. We're still not talking about the zoning variances, which I hope we will at some point, because I do believe we still need a little bit of adjustment. And I don't know if it's with the variance or the code. I just think it's a bit too restrictive of what we got going right now, but I'm hoping we can pick that up on one of our workshops here coming up and see what happens.
And on that same vein of all, the new code revisions, a lot of them allowed you guys a little more authority in making decisions. Is that working well? Do you guys feel like you ever are having to make decisions that you feel are more appropriate in front of council?
I don't know if it's any easier, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think our code is simpler. Yes, I think our code is more streamlined. And as we, like Sumner said, as we go from application to application, we find things that don't work and we try to fix them. And staff has been fantastic in pointing these things out. But a decision is you know how it is. You look at the code and you got to make the decision, and the code will help you make those decisions. And sometimes you have the tools, and sometimes you just don't. They're just not there. And that's,
I think,
go for it.
I think Ingrid, yeah, well, I think part of the question might lead to what we've been talking about. The code and the code revisions, that makes it, I mean, it's not horribly difficult for us to make those quasi-jurisdictional zoning decisions. But I think I share with Marco and others, the bigger issues would be the planning ones that we probably haven't spent enough time on. Then that's where we need to coordinate without usurping council's role. But I think the big things that we might be missing are more on that planning side that maybe we can begin to remedy a bit.
Okay, great. And then I have one last question for you guys, and then I'll let everybody else chat. And that is, with the comp plan, especially as we talk about how you guys want to be part of planning and the dialogue, how do you want to work with council? What have you found works well? Do you guys want to meet with us quarterly? How do you want to do it? What works for you guys?
I think this works pretty well. I'm hoping strongly that we will meet in the chambers again, hopefully soon, in a big square table, all of us, and just go through some topics and issues, and maybe even just brainstorm together at some point too.
I think that's great. I look forward to that. And thank you guys. Thank you for all the hard work you guys do. It's a pleasure to work. Honestly, you all are such invaluable players. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think one of the elephants in the room, Ingrid and council, well, you already mentioned them, besides specifically the airport and the mall, but the comp plan, and Jen has been good at guiding us. Let's get some money on there and figure out what's good, what remains in the comp plan, from 10 or 10 years ago that's still relevant, and what doesn't. And one thing I think is critical that would be between us and you and the public is this whole definition of what is small town character. That filters into all our proposals all the time, and it can be meant to mean almost anything you want. And to me personally, I think one of the most important planning items looking ahead the next decade or two is either eliminate the term and come up with a new term, or define it in terms of what the vision for Glenwood is, not looking backwards, but going forward, which includes, that includes everything: traffic, retail, housing, parks and rec, community events and things. And we haven't done that in a long time. So I almost cringe every time small town character comes up, because I don't know what it means to our citizenry. I don't know what it means to council or even to P&Z anymore. And I think if we can get something done in the next year or two, that will be huge in helping future commissions and councils move forward.
I would say, I know what small town character means. It means anything that's new in my neighborhood is not small town character. If it's in someone else's neighborhood, that's just progress, and that's helpful. Sorry, I'm being facetious, but it's a cudgel. I think you said it right, Sumner. That term can be anything to anybody and be used both ways. I think defining what that means and making it interpretable, I think, is one of the challenges that we're going to have with the comp plan. And I think that's an important piece of it. Paula.
Hey, this is wonderful. I'm really glad that we have a P and Z commission like we have. As everybody's mentioned, it's just great to have the level of participation you guys put into this, and very much applauded. A couple of questions, a little bit really, Marco, off of the four things that you've mentioned here. Is there specific ideas for public-private partnerships that you've already discussed as the P and Z commission that you want to bring forward now, or is that just in the future you want to be in those discussions with council?
At this point, we have not discussed that on our level. I understand the Housing Commission has, and I think we mentioned to them that we would love to have another discussion with the Housing Commission as well, and discuss the a public-private partnership. Look to other towns, what they have done. Look, see what's out there. The more you know, the better decision you can make. So I would love to start that discussion
Great.
sooner rather than later.
And maybe that gets back to us doing those joint quarterly meetings with the Housing Commission and council to kind of talk about these bigger ideas. That'd be great to have that. Is there, there's some feedback we've been getting, and I'm just curious on how P and Z feels about it, about capping growth in Glenwood. And is there a general sense on this commission, or is there any particular commissioner that has a feeling one way or another about that?
I don't like the idea of calling it capping growth, Paula. I think our geography is going to cap our growth. How we plan it will shape it. But I would, as a resident and P and Z member, I think I'd sure shy away from, Glenwood's capping its growth.
I'm on the same page with that. I don't think we want to sort of draw a line. I think managing growth successfully while maintaining our small town character, our neighborhood feels, and safety in particular should be a priority. But kind of like we went through with the weed stores, it seems strange to impose an arbitrary line. The market will probably do that, and frankly, the landmass is going to do that.
Okay, and then kind of similar to my first question, I love the fact that you guys want to be more on, you incorporate planning and zoning. That's great. Was there any particular planning programs or planning ideas that you want to put on the table that should be up for discussion now, or that you particularly want to have us dive into in the next year as a group?
Comp plan would be one.
Comp plan.
Yeah.
So really kind of more towards like 3 and 4 here are kind of combined then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to have a workshop with the Planning Commission first, if that's okay. I'm all about the downtown core. Still, I'm very much hung up on what's going on between, what is it, the 9th and 10th block right now. And I really think this is something that we as a commission should discuss first, and then give you some pointers that we found and maybe some solutions, and then maybe we'll talk about it again.
Okay.
We'll talk about it further as a whole group.
Now, Paula, one other thing about growth, which is such a loaded word, is, and you guys are dealing with it now with water fees. Do we, and I think Commissioner Hershey has talked about it often, and others have thought about it, is how do we deal with growth in relation to what we can provide in the way of infrastructure, and which comes first? And if we keep adding units without infrastructure upgrade, an infrastructure upgrade usually doesn't fall in the planning and zoning field, but it seems to me there's a limiting factor. And if we don't wrestle with that, we're going to end up with growth that doesn't work. So again, I'm throwing that back. I guess I'd throw that back to council. We haven't talked about it on P&Z. It doesn't usually come up, but that seems to be a factor, is how and where we grow. Yeah.
Feel like that's going to become part of the discussion, or at least we're going to get public input when we start talking comp plan and looking at the future of Glenwood and small town character. It all kind of goes together, just because we're already getting pushback on, from that right now. So I'm just I think it's something that we need to be aware of, that there is a portion of our population that wants us to be thinking about that.
Well,
And I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. I'm just saying there's a portion of the population that wants that to be considered.
well, maybe you got the council. I don't know. You know, we have a lawyer here. I don't know if they can do it legally, Carl. But at some point, you know, we're not dealing with infrastructure, and we can see what's going on. We can see, hey, what's happening with water, and there's road plans, and Matt's put together all kinds of stuff, and we've got broadband. But in the meantime, we're approving hundreds of units. And unless there's strong staff comment that the city can't support it, there's a disconnect, I guess is what I'm saying, because we don't consider whether the substructure of the road is okay or whether there's adequate water or electric. So there is a disconnect, and I don't know how you connect them necessarily.
You know, Sumner, that's the $20 million question that gets asked everywhere from the state legislature down to our level. And I think we're uniquely, kind of situated to maybe lead on that, kind of on a more model basis, if you will, because we are the electric infrastructure utility provider, the water, the sewer, the landfill, as well as doing the other municipal functions. And I think really it's something, Matt Langhorst and I have been talking a lot about on the water side in particular, as, we've seen, climate change dramatically in the last few years, or more to the point, we've seen the effects more acutely, I think, at our level. That I think those utility conversations probably have to be part of the comp plan conversation, because until we do link the way you're talking about, the utilities traditionally, you serve growth, whatever growth is, and there's not necessarily an overlap between the two. And we have the unique opportunity to be able to really look at that and make those decisions, rather than just circling around and going, okay, we need another huge upgrade to, whether it's sewer or water or whatever it is. We can maybe sort of plan and throttle for that at some level, I guess. So
yeah, and I guess indirectly our fees are related to it, but I don't know how,
Right.
Anyway, it is a dilemma. Yeah.
And I will just say that the comprehensive plan request to DOLA has some, because they do fund comprehensive plans, they have some specific criteria that they require if they are going to fund a grant application. And two things. One is related to water and the water planning. And then there's a resiliency piece that's also required, like mitigation for hazards. So if we are successful in our application, that is, those are requirements of the Department of Local Affairs.
Thank you, guys.
Another planning thing, and maybe it's more internal. I think, Marcos hit the workshops are huge, but well, at least in my tenure, I don't think we've ever met at least the chair people of the various commissions, and they're so interrelated, but we've never met with airport. We don't meet with DDA. We don't meet with historic preservation. Somewhere, somehow, without crossing over egos and regulations and legal, it seems that workshops between commissions would be extremely helpful. As long as commissions understand their role, that they are recommenders, not decision makers, but there's another interlocking piece that we haven't been proactive on.
And I thought, to that point, Sumner, I thought that, gosh, it was before COVID, so it was more than a year ago when we had that joint housing and P&Z meeting. I thought that was great. I know we had two. I was able to attend the second one, but yes, please, more of that.
Of course, all this means more time for all of us, but that's okay too.
We have right, staff? Jen's crying in the.
On the staff component, I wanted to say thank you so much, Jen and Gretchen, for training the new planning and zoning commissioners. That all that time and energy and knowledge, it's awesome that you can share it with them. And I know that it'll kind of set the stage for, just increased success on being on the commission. So thank you.
I guess one of the other things that I would like to see is, we this community, it seems so quaint now in light of what we're have faced with COVID and the airport and all the other things that make us crazy. But at one time, that A&B Bank was like the biggest controversy that this town had seen in a long time. And I don't want to lose, at the time I was like, okay, we're going to do something next month. We're going to pass a moratorium. We're going to, we're going to do something that addresses that. And that was a year and a half ago, or maybe more. I don't quite recall. And so I want to make sure that, we're intentional with timelines, because, well, once we get into the comp plan, then that specific actionable item can drop off. And, well, we're super busy with the comp plan, and we got this other 350 units here, and this, the mall. There's always a reason we can't do things. So, the old what gets measured gets achieved. So I would love to see these 4 items have P&Z flesh it out with staff and say, here's a timeline. Here's when we want this to come before council with for a vote or consideration. Maybe not a vote, maybe just consideration, and work back from that, because I think it's just so easy to not do things and be intentional about it. So that would be one of my goals for P&Z, is to set goals, set dates and deadlines, and then have staff relay what those deadlines are, so we know what you're working on and when we can expect to see some action. I think the inclusionary housing was kind of one of those things where we're like, gosh, we just really, really want it, and we don't want to have a 6-month process. So I think, to Shelley's point, we took action on it, but we fully expect it to go back into your court and to get it better. And I don't want to do that with other stuff, but if there are things that you see as an urgent need, or something that has a little bit of energy behind it, let us know how we can help move those things along, and then we'll kick it back to you to smooth out the rough edges and make it actually work, because we're not great at making it actually work. We're just making it good at making it move forward. Other questions, comments, thoughts? Councilor Hershey, haven't heard from you. Do you have anything? Yeah. You're muted, sir.
And I said everything I wanted to say when I was muted. I appreciate what Sumner said about infrastructure. I think that's a big concern. I've said this before, and I appreciate all your hard work and your volunteers. And, there's a long meetings that you guys do, but I think there is a large portion of this community, I think it's plurality, not a majority, that doesn't want any more growth. And I know I keep hearing, well, growth is going to be stopped by the mountains, but that's really not true. Well, how about we'll build something at the airport, or how about we'll build it at the mall, or here's an idea, let's annex some land in West Glenwood and we'll build more there. I think only the imagination of developers and realtors halts development. So and their imagination is great. So I viewed this, the reason I didn't raise my hand is more of a dialogue that I want to hear from you. I like Marco's ideas and about meeting maybe more often, but I like what you're saying, but just keep in mind that, you guys do what you do and what we do, a lot gets wrapped up in politically. And I think there is a large portion of this community who would just as soon shut down I-70 and close this off. And that's obviously not going to happen, but I don't live here because I want to live in Highlands Ranch, or because I want to live in Arvada or Aurora, and I don't think a lot of people want that, or that sort of sprawl. They like what's unique, and that's part of like the airport discussion tonight and other things. People really love it here because this is a very unique place. There is no other Glenwood Springs. I can't, there's other towns with springs in the title, but there is no place else like this. And we have to fight hard against powerful forces to preserve that. So thank you for your hard work.
So Tony, how would you go about quantifying the support or lack thereof for that vision, or defining what no growth is versus growth? Would you do it by referendum? Would you do it by land use? Do you have some other way to assess that?
Oh, it happens at the ballot box, and it happens when people get elected who espouse different views. And we only have to go 40 miles up south of here to Aspen, and you can see what that community did for 40 or 50 years to limit commercial growth and to limit growth that had unintended consequences for them. That's true, but that community made that decision. So is everybody going to be on board? No. We're not going to have a poll, Sumner, every 5 minutes. Do you want this or that? Do you want a bank here or not? Obviously. But I think we have to be very cautious that we don't, ruin our community to save it. And I think you make a good point. But I think as elections happen every 2 years and you guys get appointed by those people, I think that will fulfill what you're asking. Thanks.
Well, but Tony, that is short. My concern is that's extremely short-term planning. That's planning by election cycle.
Right.
And that can, as opposed to planning as most of us would consider it. And I understand the political part, but that's not planning. That's planning by election cycle as far as long-term land use and planning that, yes, could be undone politically, but is way more proactive about.
Yeah, but then I think you get into, I'm sorry, Sumner,
Okay.
There was a councilman who wanted this like strategic vision for 20 years. And I laughed at him because I said, every 2 years, you're going to have 3 or 4 new people who are going to say, well, look, that's not what happened. I can't predict the future. Who could have predicted 2020 and 21? Nobody with this pandemic. So I agree with you, but I think, men plan and God laughs, I think is the thing. We can make a lot of plans and we can have a vision, and that's great. I just want you to be aware that there is a group in this community, again, not the majority, who would just as soon we never met and nothing changed and everything stayed the same. That's not realistic, but you have to take that into account too. I'm fine with a long-term strategic vision, and look at that great piece of land at the confluence, and look what you could build there. You could build a hotel and you could build 32 houses. Yeah. But without a community buy-in, I think you're going to run into trouble, because what happened, and again, I'll use Aspen, like, oh, let's fix the entrance to Aspen. Let's put in a straight shot. Oh, well, we don't want that. And they'll vote the people out. And then you'll have new people who will say, well, we don't want that. So it is a problem when you have to go up against the politics. We don't have a queen or a king here. So we have a democratic representative democracy that gets to choose new people. And the people change their mind all the time. So we'll see what happens. But I don't like long-term vision when things like 2020 can happen. Thanks.
If I may add, I think that brings us kind of back to bullet number 1. Why not make do with what we have to start downtown, instead of having empty storefronts and buildings vanishing and not being rebuilt the way they should? Maybe we should focus on, hey, how do we make these 6-7 blocks, our core, vital again, and just focus on that first and foremost, and then do all the outsider kind of planning. Work from the inside out. How's that?
Let me just interject a bit, because I tend to agree with what the mayor said, and that's it. Timelines, Mark, because it kind of ties into what you were just saying. I mean, I agree. I think that's something that is easy. We can tackle. It isn't part of a comp plan. But I have a question for Jen, if I can. Jen, what if assuming we get the grant? What's our timeline on a comp plan? When will we start? When do we have a plan? We would come to us for a vote, because I think that kind of addresses.
I think we can start sometime soon to kind of go through the comp plan and sort of say, okay, these are the sections where we really think that's still valid. And I think we intend to do that in work session. I really intended to do it right at the first of the year, but it hasn't quite materialized yet. And so I think we can start before we get, hopefully, knock wood, the grant. And then I think we would, once we get the contracting piece and all that with DOLA, if we are to get the grant, then we can put out an RFP for consultants to help us do that and start kind of right away. But I do think we can do some pre-work. And like I say, I had every intent to start in January. It just, it's been a little bit nutty.
I'm just trying to get an idea, because when I get to Tony's idea, I agree. I think we need to look at this growth, no growth issue sooner rather than later. And it might change in a few years. But one good thing about a comp plan is it is a lasting. It's a longer term planning document that councils and planning staff and everybody look at. And if comes out of that, and hopefully we can have public meetings or in a COVID basis that we can bring people into the community center and get feedback on growth, no growth, and all the pluses and minuses and stuff Sumner talked about infrastructure in a discussion with the city, the residents of the city, in addition to polling other things that they would do. And if we get a plan in place in the next 12 months, theoretically in a comp plan, that's a reasonable timeline. I think that's the best we're going to be able to do in this growth, no growth issue. It's too big of an issue to tackle on a short term, not getting full input basis.
And, you know, I would say that I don't think tackling the growth or no growth issue is something that ever gets resolved. You know, it's not like one side wins or loses. This is a conversation that's gone on in this community for 40 years or for another. It goes on every day in every mountain community and every Front Range community. So I think that it's, you know, I agree with Councilor Hershey in the realm of we shouldn't rush out to approve things because they're happening to us. You know, that the parcels that, you know, we're confident, you know, that people are saying, well, just put, you know, obviously condos at the airport is something we all want to do, correct, Shelley and Steve, right? But we also have the, you know, the potential annexations. And so there's in 8th Street Crossing, that's land that we own. That's land that we can dictate however we want. So I don't know that being reactionary, I think a comp plan allows us to engage the community in what they want to see. And there will always be a plurality or majority that's going to fall on one side or not to different issues. But I think it's really important to get that comp plan in place. And even if we don't have the final stamp, first, second reading, you know, executed, we'll be able to start viewing these things. I remember when we had the new code, even though we weren't evaluating projects like the Lost Phase 1 with the new code because it wasn't formally adopted, that felt like kind of a quasi area where we're like, well, it would work even under the new code, or here's elements of the new code that, you know, we were kind of starting to work towards. And so I guess I would say, you know, let's do it concurrently. Let's look at this comp plan as we're evaluating projects, but I don't feel particularly any rush to build our way out of our housing deficiency by approving things just because they come before us. And so I think that I would guess to say is I think that comp plan is really important, but at the same time, let's do cool little stuff like no surface parking in downtown. How do we ensure the retail and restaurant viability? You know, how do we make sure a huge bank or real estate office doesn't come to the west side of Cooper Street and just destroy the vitality of that street? I think vitality is the thing that I really see planning and zoning being able to bring to our community and to ensure. I don't know what character is, but I do know what vitality feels like. And so I guess, I don't know if we can have vitality be a subsection heading in our comp plan. I'll just throw that out there. Shelley and Ingrid.
There's vitality, and then don't forget small town character, because we've got that. And you kind of led into this, but one of the things that I didn't touch on, but Marco brought up too, is yeah, I would like to see some more work on our current code, just in light of some things that we've seen go through. And if we need to tighten up areas of the code, and I'll give one example here, but and it is the larger building that's under construction that came through a while ago. And you know, we had an issue come up with that where the code apparently allowed some strange configuration of entrance to the building. When, you know, I look at our code, our development code, and it clearly says that the primary entrance to a commercial building should face the street and, you know, match the character of surrounding our historic buildings and things like that. But yet somehow it was interpreted that it was okay to have a little sidewalk go around the building and have the primary entrance face a parking lot to the south. And I don't know how that code was interpreted that way, but whatever needs to be tightened up, there's things like that that have been in our downtown guidelines and have been in our code for years. And obviously it didn't get put in tight enough in the new code. So if P&Z can make recommendations on things like that to make sure that doesn't happen again, and that when development comes in, we get what we want, and things like that, it's clear enough in the code that it can't be interpreted different ways, that, you know, when it says the primary entrance shall face the primary street and have a certain character, we should expect to get that from the developer. So I'd love to see you guys work on that and bring recommendations back to council.
Ingrid, and then we have about 8 minutes. I would love for Ingrid to ask questions and make a comment. And then if Steve Davis or Pete Waller or Jared Schaefer, I'd love to just give opportunities for everybody to have a few minutes if possible, but our time is somewhat limited. So go ahead, Ingrid.
Great, and I will only go for a second. I have one quick question, and that is it's more of a request, and that is when Jonathan says vitality, sometimes I think vitality, when I hear that, it's a lot of outside the box thinking. Bring ideas to us. I love the ideas that we see in other communities. You know, we may say, oh, that doesn't resonate with what we think what Glenwood is, but bring it to us, and you know, let us know what Salida is doing. Let us know what some community you visited in California is doing. How are they solving some of these issues that we're all working on as small communities grow? Bring these progressive ideas, because, you know, seeing these big high-rise apartments, that's not progressive, and that's not vitality, in my opinion. It may be a needed component of housing, but things that integrate new ideas, that's what I want to see. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Just real quick, Ingrid, that said, I think one of the best things COVID brought was the extended outdoor seating downtown. Amazing. Keep going, make it bigger yet. Let people sit outside and enjoy everything they want to enjoy. I think that's great. So anyway, sorry.
Councilor Davis, we haven't heard from you. Do you have anything to add?
I'm that guy who speaks very little, you know, carries a big stick. You know, I don't have a lot to add. I appreciate everybody's efforts here and all the work that you guys have done. I hope as we go work towards the comp plan that we actually do get some robust public involvement and robust public input to that, you know, so that the comp plan actually represents the community and not just those of us that are involved in government. And I kind of think as we work through strategic plans and stuff, I wonder if we really got the flavor of the community so much sometimes. It's hard to get that involvement, but we really ought to have those, work hard to bring people out and have those large public events. Now, how do you do that over Zoom? You don't. We're going to have to get kind of down the road to where we can actually do that again and go back out to the community center and have real conversations with real people. And so that's me.
Thanks, Steve. George or Pete, do you have anything to add?
Well, I had a question for Gianna in terms of developing public input. Are there components to the DOLA grant that will contribute to that?
I don't think they have it as a specific criteria in the same way that they have it for kind of like the water planning piece and the resiliency piece. But I think we would, we in our grant application said that we wanted specifically to be able to work toward reaching hard to reach populations. So folks who are commuting, we have a big population of people who are commuting. I think it was more than an hour. So I'm assuming that's probably people who are in the census who are living here and maybe going to Aspen or other places. So making sure that we are taking their temperature, that we're reaching people who are at the poverty level, that we're reaching people whose primary language is Spanish. We made a concerted effort in our application to make sure that we are trying to reach those folks. I mean, we want to reach everyone, but we want to reach harder to reach populations as well. So I think, just to Steve Davis's point.
Mhm.
I just throw something in real quickly, George, and I think one of the things that, and what Jen is saying is important, is that not only do we try to reach all those communities, but maybe rather than we have a big meeting, as Steve was indicating, I think that's important, but maybe a lot of small meetings in each of the neighborhoods, a meeting in Southeast Glenwood, a meeting over on Midland Avenue in Red Mountain, and a meeting in North Glenwood, a meeting in West Glenwood, and try to have a series of small meetings so they get individual input from people. What do they think? And I think the more that the small meeting, the more likely are you to get more input.
And I'm going to jump back in and say, it's really important for this council and for for the next councils that come along in the P&Z to feel confident that that comp plan really does represent a cross section of the people of this community. We all sit here and say, well, people want growth or they don't want growth. And I don't know where that even comes from. I just think it's kind of how we feel and not necessarily how the community feels. So we really need a cross section and feel confident that it really does represent this town.
If I may, I think that goes with the code as well. I feel like sometimes we're fighting it and we shouldn't be.
And I'll just say something to poke in here real quick. So I'm obviously the new kid, or one of the new kids on the block, and I'm very excited to be here. These are all issues that I've either kind of worked with or been part of or are near and dear to my heart. So I definitely agree with what Steve's saying on how do you get more public involvement. I know that's always what we try to do forever and ever. It's been what we tried to do, but it's I think it's critical on whether it's code and I think it's a cross section of different types of people that are involved. And I really appreciate this work session. It's been great for me from learning. And so anyway, that's about it.
Well, I'll just say real quick, if I have a fifth thing to add to that list, I would love to see the ability to do second ADUs on homes. So that's just my thing. If it's not in your top 10 things of what you want to do, but I do think density and infill is one of those things that you guys are definitely, our code does talk about. We give density bonuses, we do things like that. So I just want to encourage folks to, especially as parking and cars and the way we use that develops. I know it's probably not for this comp plan, but at some point we're gonna have to start to be planning major developments, knowing we have to start thinking about the post car as we know it future. And so I'm looking forward to those conversations. Does anybody else have anything else to add or ask? Have we given direction? I guess.
I just say, Jonathan, kudos to the staff, all of them, those that are here and those that aren't here. The support we get is fantastic.
Thanks, Sumner. I think that's real important, and I appreciate what you guys do and what staff does to give you support. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for your service.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right.
Have a good night, you all.
Thanks, Sumner. You don't want to stick around, Sumner?
Oh.
Oh, he froze up. Perfect. Meeting adjourned.
But I'm not going to stick around on Zoom. Have fun. Thank you.
Good night.
We will have a blast.
Goodbye.
Okay. If anybody else wants to come this evening and observe us at our absolute worst, tonight's the night. All right. AV update for council chambers. Alyssa, hi. How you doing?
Hi, Jonathan. I'm doing all right. How are you?
Fantastic.
Lovely.
How much of this is going to be in 3D? That's my question. Or are we going straight to virtual reality technology?
I've very much wish I could accommodate such things. Unfortunately, at this point, I have a mere PowerPoint presentation for you. And then the meetings going forward, hopefully, will be in person in this room. And so we won't have to worry about virtual reality or 3D at all. I am going to share the screen. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I have spoken with several companies. I have basically a rundown of what it's going to look like and then some specific questions for all of you. Of things, whether you are interested in having it or not interested in having it, and then I can take some questions from you. All right, so the first thing I want to do is make sure that I got your scope correctly, that I heard what you had to say and did it correctly. So the first thing on this project scope is improving the room reliability and ease of use. So right now, as we all know, the room has some problems and we can't necessarily count on it to do what we need it to do when we need it to do it. You know, it costs us staff time. It can be embarrassing for us, frustrating for us. And then at some point, if the room becomes too unreliable, people are not going to use it anymore. So that's kind of where we're at there. I heard that we want to redesign to facilitate open and accessible, safe and welcoming feel. So what I heard in that was we want it to be inclusionary. We're talking about lowering the dais, making it more, or at least the monitors, if not the entire dais, making it more of a community feel, less of a we're up on stage and you are all down there. Having potentially a table instead of a podium where people can come and sit and talk to you, where they don't feel like they're up making a presentation, having to speak in front of public kind of a feel. We want to keep with our ADA compliance and improve that ADA compliance, or like make it more welcoming feeling rather than just being compliant, as well as doing Spanish translation to make it more open to the Hispanic community that we have here. And then the hybrid Zoom meetings. So continuing to allow virtual meetings, virtual input to us, presentations and things of that nature. And then the other thing that I heard was increasing safety. So potentially easier exits to get out of the room, or potentially having the dais be built in a way that it's actually more protective to create some safety there. And then the last bit that I heard is we're going to replace this aging technology with new and up-to-date technology. Basically, most everything in the room is from 2002. So 19 years is a relatively decent lifespan to have received out of this equipment, I feel. Most of the companies that I spoke with are wanting to keep some of the newer equipment that we have replaced in the last few years. So that investment that we put into the room over the last, 4 years won't be completely lost. A lot of that would stay and be reintegrated into the new design. Just in case we've all forgotten, because it's been a hot minute since we've been in this room. This is the existing layout for the most part. You can see, I'm going to turn on this little laser pointer here. This desk, it shows in this location, it's actually over here. This is where the city manager and city attorney sit. It's not here. This is where the podium is. This is where the document camera is. This is where the city clerk sits, and then your normal dais. The biggest problem we have with redesigning this room is actually the fact that the floor is raised underneath the dais. It's not just the dais sitting there. There's actually, like if you recall, there's ramps that you have to walk up to get back behind there. So that will control to some extent the way we deal with the space, potentially. That's, really the biggest problem we see with kind of redesigning how the dais is laid out. But I do have two layouts to show you for new layouts. One utilizes this same picture, but is a little bit different. And then the second is a complete change to more what I heard you guys saying that you wanted. So if you recall, because this is relevant for the next slide, each one of you has on your desk section of the dais a monitor that can show you the computer it's attached to, or a device that you have hooked into it, or the projector, whatever is being presented onto the projector behind you. It also has, you know, in that box where you can choose which screen you're looking at on your monitor, it also has the voting capability that we kind of got rid of partway through, like right before COVID happened. As well as your microphone and, you know, some like dongles to plug in an iPad or whatever. So in our next kind of look, so this, sorry, I'm gonna go back half a second. The only screen in this room, as you recall, is the projector screen that is behind your back. It's, you know, that projector is very old, it's not very bright, it's been okay, I think, as far as the layout of the room goes, to have just that be the only screen. But in all of the conversations that I had, what I heard from you guys was that you want to kind of do away with that one centralized big screen that's kind of really far away to see for the people in the very back of the room, and going more to multiple screens around the room. So in this next picture, you're going to see this. So this is one of the layouts that is proposed. This leaves the dais as it is. We could potentially put these seats as that seated podium that we were talking about, but of course, again, this is that same picture, so those desks are actually over here, and that's where the city manager and the attorney sit. So this has basically each one of you still maintaining your own small monitor. These are designed where it's kind of a flat thing, so you wouldn't actually probably see it over the lip of the dais at all. There is, in this instance, this company quoted both to do a big screen here, like a television, 100-inch television, or or we can do these two screens on the side. We do have one of these screens on the side already that we have used in the past for showing the agenda when we went to the civic clerk system. We can potentially put one below that. So there would be two screens on this wall and then a third screen over on the other side of the wall. This has two screens hanging from basically this section. One faces the dais and the other faces the audience, as well as another set of screens here and here to be easier for the back rows of the audience to see in this instance. Yes, Jonathan?
Thanks. So I don't have a pointer, but what is the purpose of the 100-inch screen and the screens behind us if we have the screens that are, like, I guess, right in front of the city clerk and city manager's desk that are projecting out for like the presenters and the people in the front couple rows of the audience?
They would be, I feel, completely optional. And in this particular one, you know, they quoted it out just so we would know if we really wanted that, but they weren't necessarily recommending it.
Okay.
I think this would be more, these ones would be, you know, these very front people. It may be a little easier. They may end up craning their neck a bit. Or this drop, there is a bit of like a change in the ceiling. There's a drop ceiling in this section and in this section and behind you. But there's a section of plaster that is for this room separator in these two spaces. So there's a chance that they may not actually be able to see those from the very front. And we may need those in the back for that reason. This does away with your ability to switch between the monitors. So you would basically just have here on your desk the monitor and your microphone in this particular layout. And this has additional speakers added. Currently, there are not speakers on this side of the room. We have just the speakers kind of over the audience area of the This is the second layout that we have that is more kind of what I heard from you guys as far as what you might be looking for. So it's more of an oval shape so you can see each other better, feel more like you're like at a conference table kind of talking to one another. And then the audience is over here kind of being able to see everything. These two seats here are for a presenter. So if someone were coming to talk to you, they can just sit there instead of having to stand at the podium and feel like they're presenting. This has the same kind of a thing where we left the monitor here. They quoted a TV for here, but are not necessarily recommending it. And then we would have back-to-back monitors. And they did say that we may end up needing to move these a bit more this way. So it may end up being more one here and then either one straight to the back of it for you to see and everyone's looking at these, and then these people in the front row are looking at these on the back. You know, we can mix and match. Basically, what I'm looking for, in case this wasn't entirely clear, is your vision of what you want this RFP to look like. We can write it however we want. We can ask for as many monitors as we want, as many televisions as we want in the room, and we can, you know, let them use their judgment of where the best visibility is at that point. You know, this is based, I think, a bit on how Aspen's is laid out. I heard that we kind of want to feel a bit how Aspen is laid out. We like how Carbondale is laid out. So this is more of that kind of a layout.
Go ahead, Tony.
I want to interrupt you, but I just, as just a primary point, you know, doing these meetings at home, sometimes I'll use 2 laptops, but I mean, one thing I don't like about it, whether it's raised a little bit or not, and what Carbondale and Aspen don't have, is like you could bring your little Chromebook or whatever, your little laptop, but those screens, I mean, you still sort of envision monitors in front, and I just don't know that that's necessary if it's more like a table thing. Do you agree or not?
I do. So regardless of what we do with the dais, we will be flattening those monitors out. So one of the challenges that we do have with this room is that multiple organizations or like multiple commissions use it. Planning and zoning doesn't they don't receive Surface Pros like you guys do. And so they were pretty clear that they would really, really appreciate it if we left the monitors and the computers there for them to use. But we can certainly, like, our plan is definitely to lay these down, either build them into the tabletop or at least have a very flat monitor so that it's completely out of your way and it's not going to be in between you and everyone else.
Well, that's important for me, and then I'll let everyone else talk. But I just, you know, the whole point of sort of Jonathan of this casual sort of, hey, people come in, you're sort of at their same level. And then you have this giant 15-inch computer screen in front of you that I'm peering over. I can barely see Paula. So no, she's next to me, but I just think it's a bad idea. So if they were flush with the table, or if there was some other way, or if they were removable, because I don't need it if I have this.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Yep.
Thanks. Paula, go ahead.
Considering that.
In an option 2, is that more limited seating?
No, my requirement that I gave them when we laid it out was that it would have the same capacity, same seating capacity for audience.
And the screens that are in front of us or in front of the audience, what size are those?
It depends on which one. I saw both 55-inch screens and 75-inch screens.
Okay, so like a large television.
Yeah, they're gonna feel, because it's a large room, they won't feel quite as large, but this, for comparison, if you recall kind of the size of the one that we were putting the agenda up on once we got Civic Clerk, that's up on the back wall, that one I believe is a 75.
Such a long time, I have no memory. But the screens that you're showing right now on this option 2, they look like they sit on top of a counselor on 2 sides. So I don't see visibility for some of that. Am I misunderstanding? And did you say we could move those to wherever?
So you are not misunderstanding the picture. That is what I was speaking to, was that when they showed me this picture, I told them that we would need to move those out a bit. So
Okay.
right now they're showing them here. Realistically, the closest is they're probably going to be in this area.
Great, thank you.
So you guys can actually see them. And so that also the people sitting at this end can see them.
And do either of these options address kind of the safety information and that you had talked about at the beginning?
So not directly. And the reason that is we offered to be responsible for building this seating arrangement. And so that would be something that we would work with our SWAT department on, of how to make those either, thick enough that they're protective. There wasn't really room there wasn't the ability in the room to move it forward enough that like these exits were super accessible to you. There are these two exits on this side of the room. Both of these go into the kitchen area. And then there is an exterior door that comes out the side of the building, out of the kitchen, out of the back of the kitchen area.
Sorry, Tony.
Climbing over Tony. Just get out of my way. Sorry, I'm kidding.
I'm
gonna take care of you, Tony.
I am hoping that if we were to deal with the fact that the floor is raised, and I want to make it clear, like it's all covered in carpet. I didn't go and like peel anything up to see what's under there. There's a chance we can just take it out, that it's just a raised floor. If it's not part of the slab, then we should be able to, we could potentially talk about flattening that. And then it would be at least an easier exit, because there wouldn't be a ramp. There wouldn't be any kind of like weird stuff going on to trip over or anything like that to get out of the exits.
Hey, Alyssa, this is Carl. Just real quickly, when we're talking about the needs of the Planning Commission, obviously all the tech is going to change. So, if you put screens in, they would be new, and obviously the price of screens have come down and whatever. But I mean, is it realistically an option simply to set them? I mean, I know everybody has a hard time when you move from viewing big plan sets to smaller plan, to working off the computer, but is it possible that we just start issuing Surface Pros to the Planning Commission to kind of address that, that issue?
Yeah.
Or I would suggest that we just have 4 or 5 available, but so many of us, probably one of us have a laptop or a tablet that we usually bring to other meetings as a part of our professional life that we actually feel more comfortable with. Everything's in the cloud these days. So I guess one of my suggestions would be, we just have 4 or 5 that are available. If people need them, they're there and available. We allow for 3 or 4 different types of plugins, but we don't mess around with the expense or the carpentry of in-surface screens. That's my thing. We have 15 minutes left. Everybody else's hands is up. Shelley, Ingrid, Charlie, and
so I would ask, can I actually continue on? And then once we're all done, if you still have questions afterwards, would that be all right?
Please,
Sure.
Thank you for interrupting.
So as far as functionality that we're going to be getting out of the room going forward, we're going to replace all of the analog equipment. I have found that a lot of the problems that we run into stem from the converters that we have for the analog to digital equipment that we have in the room. Sorry, my iPad is acting up. It doesn't want to give me this in the right direction. Okay. So we'll be handling that problem where we won't have all these converters going back and forth trying to turn, we're not going to use VGA anymore. It's not going to happen. So it's just stepping us forward to that, higher quality technology, and it's going to help out a bunch. We're going to install properly powered equipment. Right now, the equipment that is in that room, not only is it old, it also isn't really designed to support what we're trying to ask it to do. So we're going to put equipment in that is the perfect size for what we have now and will allow us to grow for a bit. The room will allow for continued virtual meetings. it will also function as a conference room. So they're basically going to give us a setup where we walk in, we have a touch screen, you can push a button that says this is just, you know, a conference room today, or you can push a button that says, yes, we're going to have all the broadcast equipment, we're going to be doing it as a virtual meeting as well. And it'll eliminate the issues that we had, like that the room currently has, where we can't do a Zoom meeting in there because there's a delay in the video, there's echo problems with the audio. It's just a mess. Whereas basically all of this equipment is now designed to deal with those problems, and we won't have any of that. So there'll be a system where it's piping basically what's happening in the Zoom meeting off to one of the screens that you guys can see. So you're able to see those presentations and things that are happening from the Zoom meeting and the people talking. And then it'll also be separately broadcasting it out to everybody else. So we won't have the problems like what we would currently be facing if we tried to do that. It will allow for work sessions set up without table mics. So basically, in order to make it a really functional conference room to do virtual meetings in, we also are going to be putting a ceiling microphone array kind of in that audience area. And because we're doing that, where if we don't change the layout of the room and you continue to do work sessions with the folding tables, where that's set up will actually be picked up by those ceiling mounted microphone array, and we won't have to mess with, oh, I hope I'm close enough to the table mic, I hope I'm, you know, any of those things. We will get simplified designs with as-built documents. Right now, we don't have any documentation to try to troubleshoot the room with. It's just, yeah, we've had this problem before, let's try that. So we'll actually have documentation, it's gonna be fantastic. And then we're gonna maintain the ability to record audio only. That way the clerks have control. They know that they're getting that audio recording, they're able to do that. And then we can use it that way for work session or for executive sessions if we need to. But we can also use that room in the exec sessions without having it broadcasting necessarily. And still include, if we had somebody who had to be attending by Zoom or something, they could still be involved. Most of the equipment that they're talking about utilizing has 3-year warranties, and then all of the companies that I spoke to are willing to do a 2-year, basically like workmanship warranty. So they're saying no cost for any repairs or anything that they need to do for the first 2 years. Specific things that I want to ask you whether you're interested in having. The dais redesign is the big one. So whether you want to change the layout, whether you want to reinforce it in any way, you know, if it's important to you that it has somewhere that you can get behind it, or if it can be more of a conference table type of a feel. That's the first thing I'm going to ask for you guys to kind of think about and give me the answer. The large screen that we talked about behind the dais, if we feel like we don't need that big TV, that saves us a fair bit of money. I would like to know whether, like, how you're kind of landing on that interpretation system. We could potentially add this after the fact. It will be easier if we do it now, to integrate. And like and what I'm thinking of and what I heard was, you know, in person, there is an interpreter there in the moment interpreting for people in the audience who are using a headset, who you know, are getting that feedback right then and are hearing it right then in the moment, not after the fact on YouTube or anything like that, right then in the room. The other thing I would like to know is if you guys are happy with the talk timer that we ended up with that just sits on the podium there, or if you would like to integrate a talk timer into the system. We can potentially have them build out a talk timer that has the clock kind of up on one of the TVs or in the corners of all of the TVs, so that it's you know, clear and there, and it's counting down with minutes and time, which then, you know, that little thing that we bought realistically does a good job. So it's up to you. It can be integrated. It doesn't have to be if you don't find a reason for it. Voting system. So one of the things that I know we were challenged by before COVID was having a voting system that worked well and displayed what you wanted it to display. With Zoom, I know we're all kind of used to doing voice votes now, so I don't know if that's something that you want, if you are just happy to continue with voice votes, or if you would like me to have them quote out like if you want me to put in the RFP that we want a voting system, and if we have a voting system, whether you care for the results to be able to be posted up on one of the TVs or all of the TVs, or if it's enough for the city clerk to be able to read it out. So either way, I need to know those two. Like if you do want the voting system, I also need to know whether you want it to be able to be put up on the screen. 2 out of 3 of the companies are wanting to sell us this ClickShare, which is a super cool thing, but it's totally optional. Basically, the functionality of it is you plug this USB into any computer, laptop, whatever you have, and you can project it onto the screens in the room seamlessly. Basically, you plug it in, you push the button, and it puts it up there. You can do 2 computers at a time. It would be super helpful for, you know, using it as a conference room. If somebody comes in with their own computer, they don't have to sit somewhere specific. We can also go around this by just having a place where somebody has to sit to be able to plug in to project, kind of like how the room has now, where you have to stand at the podium to be able to project. And that's a reasonable solution. The other design that didn't sell us the ClickShare has every PC that's in the room, including each one of yours, being able to be projected to the screens. So that would basically give us that one place you can plug in a different computer, but you can also utilize any computer in the room and have it be projected. Monitor switching. So is it important to you to be able to see what's projected on the screens, or your own computer, or your iPad, or, you know, is that important? Is that something that you use at this point because you do currently have it? Do you use it, or is it okay if that just goes away? And then the last thing is kind of like a desk speaker versus ceiling. So I've had it offered to us both ways, where how I showed you in that first layout option, they put speakers kind of behind you guys so that you're getting that sound easier. The other thing that so one company said that, putting new speakers in the ceiling. The other 2 companies wanted to put like speakers next to you. So you've got kind of more of a personal speaker that is there for you to be able to hear with. So those are the things that I'm kind of curious of, if you have preferences. And then that's the last of it. So I think I'll leave this up in case you want to speak to any of these items. I don't need an answer for all of this tonight, but I do need it to make the RFP. So the faster I have these answers, the faster we can get moving.
All right. Thank you, Alyssa. Steve Davis.
Well, I didn't expect to be up so quickly there. A couple of things. Major remodel, I have no interest in at all. I actually like the dais as it is currently. There's a reason it's elevated. It's so that people in the back of the room can actually see you and not see the back of the head of the person in front of them. You know, they didn't put us up there so that we were superior in any way. It's just so that people can see us. I can see everybody on the dais. I would like some bulletproofing done in front to so that we can duck and hide and feel like, you know, they're not going to shoot right through the plywood. I think all those functionality items seem very reasonable, and I think we should go forward with that. But to go through and completely remodel that thing and tear the floor down, tear that whole dais apart, I think it's a beautiful dais. In fact, I want my old chair back. And I'll email my other thoughts.
All right. Thanks, Steve. I think Shelley, Charlie, Paula.
Okay, thanks, Alyssa. As far as the full remodel, I have to say I'm somewhat ambivalent. It would depend on the cost. I'm okay with the dais up, like the comments that Steve made, but I've also been in the Carbondale and some of the other council chambers where they're sitting evenly. feels a little more intimate. But I guess the big one for me is to have the table, whether we're sitting up or not. Let's get rid of that podium and give people who are presenting a comfortable place to sit in a desk, to sit at where they have all the hookups as far as presenting and everything like that. I do not think we need screens behind us. To me, the only reason, and that ties in with that monitor switching, the only reason we had that monitor switching is so that we could see that big projector that was behind us that we couldn't see without it. So if we have decent sized screens that are visible from our chairs and visible to the audience, I think that makes that big screen behind us obsolete. So I see no need for that. And I really see no need for monitors. I think I personally use my own laptop. You know, I think everybody has their own way of doing that. Some might be using the Chromebooks, but I agree with what Carl said. Maybe it's cheaper if we just give Chromebooks to P&Z members if they want them. But if they're going to use their own laptop, let's just have a clean table where people can bring their laptop in and work with that. Let's see, what else? The ClickShare looks interesting. I don't know, I guess it would depend on cost. The voting system, again, we've had like 2 or 3 iterations of that I've seen, and they've never worked that great. And I think you bring up a really good point, Alyssa. We're used to the voting. Maybe we just let the clerk do that and make sure it's recorded, and we don't have to have the red lights coming on for the audience to see. Talk timer is pretty necessary, but I'm wondering if that's integrated into Zoom. And that was my other big question is, can we, when you say we can have virtual meetings, does that mean we can have the hybrid meeting where we're live, but it's virtual and people can see us and live and call into the meeting? Or would they, I assume we wouldn't see people from home.
Shelley, I think that's a really important question. I think that deserves a very thoughtful discussion.
Yes.
We're 3 minutes over already.
Okay, let's go on.
I think Alyssa, yeah, I would love to get Alyssa to get some direction before, but we're running behind already. So
okay, so that was my direction. I'm good, and maybe I can get the question answered on the details of the virtual meetings. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks. I think I don't know who's next, but I think Charlie, then Paula, then Ingrid. Does it matter? Go ahead, Charlie. I like the new face, by the way, Charlie.
Thank you. I'm clean shaven now. So I'll real quickly, for the most part, I echo what Shelley and Steve have said. I'm not, the dais doesn't bother me. I sit at the end. I think I can see everyone. So maybe if you're in the middle, it's more difficult to do. I don't know. Safety issues, clearly something I think is important. I hate that we got to do that, but I think it's important. I think on the monitors in general, as long as I can see what's being presented, I don't need anything in front of me. I would like something that I could have my laptop and have other things that I would look at my laptop or Chromebook, whatever I have in front of me, because that's what I do right now in these Zoom meetings. I got 3 screens open in front of me right now. And so I think that's important, but I don't need to have the monitor switching as long as I can see on the big screen. I think on those big screens, that one in the middle rather than 2 on the side might make more sense. It might save us money, but I'll let you guys figure that stuff out. Interpretation system, you guys got to figure that out. I don't know how to do it. I don't even understand it. Timer, I think the one we have is fine. Voting system, that may be where I disagree with what Shelley said. I think the problem with the voice vote is if you're last, you kind of watch what's going on and you can play with your vote. And I think we all have voted at one time. We press the button and it's revealed at one time, yes or no. Now I always know Rick Voorhees was voting because I watched him push his button first. But if there's some way to do it on your computer and vote, I think it's good for the public to see how we're voting. So I think if we can somehow share that with the end vote, once the reveal happens, everybody's voted. I think everyone should see how we voted. I think they deserve that. ClickShare, I have no real opinion. And I will, because I'm an old guy and I have hearing aids, I like the concept of a desk speaker. So I don't have a speaker there, but if I can't hear something, I can turn up. One of the biggest problems in that room I have is when the noise level's up, there's a lot of people in there. Sometimes there's not a lot of people. The same thing I have if I go to in some of the restaurants. It echoes around and I can't hear anything. And I'm disabled, so you have to give me my old disabled, which I think is a desk speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I have the same problem with hearing, so I completely understand. It has nothing to do with being old.
Hey guys,
You're too young.
I have in my ear right now, I'm hearing from the booth that we can push the broadband back to another meeting. So we actually can have a little bit more time to digest this. So what's that? Yeah, okay, great. So is that okay if we push the broadband discussion so we have a little bit more time to give Alyssa the direction that she needs? Signify by saying aye or revealing it all at once, Charlie.
Aye.
Okay, so is that okay that we push that broadband back? We can take a little bit more time to vet this and get everybody because we're already out. So sorry, Charlie, I kind of rushed you because I said we don't have time. So is there things that you want to expound on a little bit more?
No, but Deborah, are we okay with, do you need a decision on broadband today for Eagles purposes?
This is Carl. I think we are okay pushing that, or else Deborah wouldn't have passed that along to the mayor. I guess she is on. Never mind.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I picked up that. No, thank you. I just said it fast, so I got everything in.
Okay. Paul, then Ingrid.
Yeah, I can go pretty quickly as well. I didn't hear any kind of cost estimate, which is always something that I think helps us make these decisions. And I know that you have to wait for some information, but even a broad scope of what we are looking at would definitely help. In particular, rebuilding the dais, that sounds like a money sink to me. So bulletproofing, yes. Safety, yes. And then kind of taking it from there. I agree with Charlie on the voting system. I think that allows somewhat of, I don't want to say privacy, but it really kind of puts it on your shoulder to make a decision and not see what the vote is around the room, depending on when your name is called. So I'd like to see something like that in place. And large screen behind the dais. As long as we can see a screen somewhere, I think that's all that matters. I don't need one behind me. And I know there were a couple of times since I've been on council where I had to turn around like this because something was wrong with our monitors. But definitely, as long as something's accessible, that's all I care about. And I don't mind the Chromebook. My only problem is sometimes, for me anyways, it's a small screen on my Chromebook. And there are things that we have to see that it's a little harder to discern. So that's my only problem, but I'm pretty flexible. As Charlie said, I've got a couple of laptops sitting in front of me, and just because I couldn't have a camera on the Chromebook today, I'm over here on my personal laptop. So there we go. Those are kind of the things I've been thinking about as you've spoken. And thank you very much, Alyssa. This is a lot of work, and I appreciate having these opportunities to discuss this.
Thanks, Paula. Ingrid, then Tony.
Thank you, Alyssa. This is awesome. I'm kind of with everyone else that the dais does not need to be remodeled. I think that other than safety, I think we should just kind of roll with where we are, and any extra money we have, I think it should be dedicated to updating technology to really support two components. And that is one, the virtual component, allowing more people. I think after this last year, more people are going to want to connect in. Architects are going to want to do that, just allowing that. And I think the second one is just connectivity for ease of use, picking systems that get 5 stars on making sure that it's so easy that all types of users who walk up, regardless of what tech skill they are, can very quickly start sharing their own information. I don't think planning and zoning needs laptops. And in fact, I think it's indicative, if you watch any meetings, they're all doing them at home, and the majority of them, if not all of them, have the ability to be doing it at the city building. Maybe some of them, maybe we could have a few that are available to rent, and we, connect with those commissioners and see if it's something that they need for the evening. And then I think the only other component was the screens behind us. I think that a priority always is making sure that the audience knows what we're looking at and what information. So as long as we can concurrently be doing that, I don't really care where they are or what quality they are, just as long as it's a great tool for educating the audience. And that's it. Thank you.
Councilor Hershey.
Yeah, and I just wanted to be clear with Mr. Davis that I wasn't advocating doing away with the dais, just those monitors. But he makes a good point. People sitting in the back of the room can see better. So I'm not looking and spent, like Shelley said and Ingrid said, spending a fortune. As far as the Planning and Zoning Commission is, for 12 months, they've had meetings at home. So somehow they've figured out the technology and they're doing it at home. When they go back to the council chambers, all those computers and equipment and electronics, I'd love to get rid of it all. And you bring your Chromebook and your laptop, and then there's monitors behind us. The security thing, of course, is important. And I'm ambivalent as to the instant voting, but if that makes everyone happy, including Mr. Wellman, then I'm for it. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll let me jump in before everybody else goes a second time, if you don't mind. I think it'll start from the end. Instant voting, I think it works fine how we do it. Like, some bad part of me kind of likes the drama, and that's not a reason to do it or not to do it. That's just a stupid reason. But I think if people really did feel that way, I mean, I've been to every commissioner and city council meeting from Parachute to Aspen to Eagle. No one else has the instant voting. They all do a voice vote or all in favor. If it's something that's not contentious, all in favor, signify by aye. I just haven't been anywhere else that's done it, and it seems to work there. I think if there's an issue or if people want to have that desire, we can do simple as something as all those in favors, raise your hand, and we all agree to raise them immediately. So I don't feel that's a necessity, but I'll defer to the larger group if people really feel strongly about the instant voting. I think the screens behind us, I don't like. I think the dais, ideally, it would be directly between those two things that we saw, current condition and the big round table, but having it slightly more curved, per my preference, seems to add a lot of expense and doesn't seem like there's a support for that. And I don't think I support it. So let's leave the dais, reinforce it with steel plating or whatever we need to do. Even if we can take that lip off the top, because we're going to have to redo the counters anyway if we're going to get rid of the monitors that are sunk in order to have a bigger space and more usable space. The click shares, that sounds really cool. I'd like to do something like that or have that available, or the all-room PCs. I'll leave that to you. I think it's a price and convenience thing. At least, Alyssa, geek out on that if you want. Obviously, monitor switching, I don't think we need to have. Interpretation system, I think we're all for, or most of us for that. And talk timer needs to be on the screens so that members from both council and the public can be a little bit more less verbose. And so basically, I think I agree with about basically everything Steve Davis said. And last thing, if people want larger screens, may I suggest that the 4 or 5 laptops that we have or Chromebooks that we have available for either P&Z or council members be like 17-inch? I think that would address for people who are wanting a larger experience or larger screen and don't feel comfortable with whatever, our 12-inch Surface Pro, that it's available to people if we want it. But I think that eliminates the big monitors, which none of us seem to like. Steve, Shelley, then Charlie.
Well, I'm glad we have more time because I wanted to talk about the drapery and the wall colors. Is that okay?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Well, I'm really just kidding. I hate the mini blinds. I wish there was something other than mini blinds in there. They're just all beat to hell and they look like crap. The only thing I really wanted to bring up was the voice vote thing. I think that's something that seems to be a debate here. And I really like the instant vote, however you do it, whether it's everybody raise their hand at one time, because I think that it does lend itself the way that we do the voice call now, even as honest and transparent as I am. I tend to count votes and then I will change my vote just because it's convenient to do that. And for political reasons, I'll go, well, it passed the way I wanted it to, so I can now take the political stand out and vote no. So I don't like that about this deal, the way we do it currently. That's me.
I can't remember who thanks, Steve. I can't remember who I said was next. I guess by Charlie doing this, you mean Shelley?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and I just have a quick one. I agree with what Steve just said about the voting. Yeah, that's good points you guys brought up on that. The only other question I had that I haven't heard a lot about is ADA kind of accessibility stuff. It's, you know, we did have a counselor before that was hard of hearing. And so I'd like to see us have kind of top of the line equipment. If we do have either a counselor or someone in the audience who needs help with hearing, or even, I don't know what's out there for people who are impaired or, you know, other accessibility needs.
Hand out megaphones.
Yeah. But it is a need out there, and it'd be nice if we could accommodate people.
Thanks, Shelley. Charlie, who's next? You're keeping track here. Was it you or Ingrid? Okay, Charlie.
And I'll be real brief. I agree with Steve's last comment. I think those things you see in the Muppets, you know, the big curved horns, we hand those out to people like me, and I could have that, hold it up and listen to people. The only two other comments I want to put is I want to mention that screen behind the dais. I think it's totally unfunctional. You got to turn off the lights. And I've been in the audience, you know, and trying to look at that. You can't half the time see what people are doing. And somebody said we don't need to even worry about the quality. In today's technology, you can buy pretty good quality TV screens for a fairly low price. And I think we have good quality stuff that we can see from the dais, the audience can see from their side. And again, I think in the middle would do that. Last comment I'll make is, if anyone has a Denver Post, there was an interesting article in there today about Littleton going back to in-person meetings and this combination of Zoom and you know, people still be able to participate by Zoom. And I think that at least what I read in that article, that seems to be favored, and we need to keep the public engaged, and it's a good way to do it. So I hope we can continue to do that.
Ingrid.
And I was just going to reinforce what a few others have said and what Steve said so well, and that is that I do like the instant vote. I think that it's a great way to, well, do exactly what Steve said we don't want to do, and that is have a political vote instead of just our authentic vote.
Okay. You know, the last thing I guess I would say, I'm glad we had this time. Thank you, Deborah, for allowing it. If there's a way, and if there's not, and it's just prohibitively expensive, but the only other thing I would love to see from the safety standpoint is an egress out for Paula and Tony. That side, you know, having a door, just another door that could just get popped open and you can get out there, because that corner for, well, Deborah, Tony, and Paula's, it's not great. You know, Steve is just, you know, he's just going to take his lumps. I know that's the kind of guy he is. So if we could look at that with our SWAT team, would it take to punch a hole or a door in there? Doesn't sound cheap or easy, so that's fine. Sounds like I'm hearing we like the instant voting. So that seems like we have consensus on that. I guess I like the all room PCs. Versus the click share, if we can do that and it's not a huge cost difference. Is there any other guidance, Alyssa, that you need from us? Or are you hearing enough consistency, or are you hearing some conflicts like, ooh, I don't know, do they really want that? Or some people said this and some people didn't. Or what are you thinking, Alyssa?
I guess I would tell you what I heard, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. We're not going to remodel the room. We're going to leave the dais, but potentially reinforce it and look at taking off that lip that it has to potentially make it a flat surface, kind of out to everybody, maybe with a tiny lip so stuff doesn't roll off the edge or something. I heard we don't want large screens behind you guys. We want everything kind of more forward. I'm not sure what I heard on the interpretation system. So I think we kind of want it, but like I heard people really want it, and then I heard people not talk about it. So I'm not sure exactly where we landed there.
I think if you heard more than one person say, I like that idea, and you didn't hear anybody say, I don't like that idea, I think that's either people nodding in agreement. So I see Steve Davis's hand up, so I'll let Steve speak for himself.
Yeah, I just want to say I would leave the lip in place because as a cabinet maker, that's a huge ordeal to try to figure out how to cut that thing off. It doesn't stick up that high. It hides my candy and it hides Jonathan's trail mix and our drinks, so I like to have clutter on my desk and I don't want everybody staring at it. So I would just leave that there. All you really need to fill in that hole is just to, put some countertop in there and that's done.
And I was one that suggested that, and I think it's more of the, how do we break down barriers to the audience? And, but what you said makes all the sense in the world. So I retract the lip statement. Shelley.
I was just going to speak to the interpretation, and I'm assuming that's the translation. Is that right, Alyssa?
That's correct. Yeah, that would be in person to Spanish for people sitting in the audience.
Right. And I thought we had voted on that separately as a council. So maybe that's why you're not hearing about it, is we've already voted to kind of move that forward. And even though it's we're giving Deborah time to explore it and stuff, I think it's we're all expecting that, would be my interpretation.
I agree, Shelley. I think the issue is what my comment was on that list is what is a system? You figure out something that works. That's my view. So, and I don't know if you got a chance to finish your summary, so let me go back to you.
Okay. I heard that we do want a talk timer that will show up as like a countdown on all of at least the lower corner or something of all of the displays in the room. I heard that we do want a voting system that allows us to put the results up on a screen. I heard that depending on price, ClickShare or having every room or every PC in the room be able to project to the screens. Either way is fine, just kind of go by cost and what seems more efficient and more effective. I heard that we don't want monitor switching. We don't want monitors on the desk. We want people to bring in their own laptops. We can supply an assortment of sizes of laptops for people if they either don't have one or forget it, like up to something of like a 17-inch size, so that if there's an issue with the small monitors, we can handle that problem. I heard desk speakers. We like the idea of the desk speakers with the desk speaker microphone, and really that being, and then your voting system, and that being pretty much everything that's on your desk in front of you. Did I get it?
Council?
Sounds like it to me.
I think she got it.
And new mini blind.
And new mini blinds. Yes, I did write that down. I don't have a lot of power over mini blinds, but I can, it's not my area of expertise, but I can certainly make sure that we get those dealt with.
Nothing warmer than a mini blind. Those mini blind, it's cold in that room sometimes.
Okay, I was just going to bring up, actually, is there something we can do about how hot it is in that room all the time? I swear.
I thought what time of year?
All the time. It's so hot all the time.
No.
We want climate controls at the dais.
He has a climate control. Yes, that is something you've also heard, Alyssa.
I'm going to go ahead, also not Alyssa's area of expertise, that it is difficult. Climate control throughout the entire building is extraordinarily difficult.
Although I do get roped into that sometimes.
Yes, and I thought we had something going on that with the energy, but we won't go into that right now.
Hey, do we want to, I guess we have 5 minutes before I'd like to adjourn this. Can we have the conversation in 5 minutes, or is it a longer conversation, to which Shelley brought up earlier, now that we have a little bit of time, about, how we want to come back, and if we want to do a hybrid in-person Zoom kind of discussion. Is that something we can have now, or do you need to have that, Alyssa, to move forward with things?
I do not. I think what I heard was we definitely want it to be possible. Also, I know that even just in the last 2 weeks, it has come up that it would be super handy for council chambers to be able to host like a Zoom meeting just for staff, because we're trying to sit far away from each other and that's the only room big enough, and we can't actually do a video call in there. So I think either way, it's not changing the cost of what we're doing. It isn't necessarily something we need an approval, but I will answer Shelley's question because I think I can do it in less than 5, that basically it lets us use that room like it's a giant conference room, right? Like you've seen people sitting in a conference room and they're on the Zoom call and there are other people. So you've got your monitors up where you can see the other people who are on the Zoom call. You can see anybody's screen that they're presenting. And we can just be in the room where what they're seeing is either the full screen of the dais, depending on how we do it, or basically, you know, who's talking. So it will be seamless and it shouldn't be a problem to just keep doing these on Zoom and also have them broadcast the way we used to have them broadcast.
That sounds great. And how will, like if someone has a question for us from out in the never sphere, wherever, how will we see them? Will we just hear them, or how will that work?
Yeah, so it'll be the same as it is now, where they're able, like we can promote them to a panelist so that they can have their video on and everything, or we can not do that. We can have it basically set up the same way so that Jonathan or whomever would like to be controlling it, if it wants to be the city clerk or Jonathan or you or whomever, are able to see people who have their hands raised and they're able to just call on those people. Same as
Great. That's awesome. Okay. Thanks, Alyssa.
Paula, last words?
Yeah,
Well,
just this actually leads. No, don't talk.
No, I
Yes.
said no last word. It doesn't have to be last words. I'm just like, oh, let's wrap this up, but go ahead.
So when I came onto council about 2 years ago, one of the first votes that came up was whether or not we wanted to make it an opportunity for council people to participate in meetings if they were stuck out of town. And at that time it was voted down, but I think with our technological advances, we should address that again as a council, if not now, then at a future session on, you know, Steve was stuck out of town a year and a half ago and made it all the way back over 24 hours of travel to participate in the meeting. It would have been better if he could have just Zoomed in and not done that. So I'm not saying we all just kind of take a holiday and never come into the city hall, but I think we should have that opportunity discussed again.
Jonathan's laughing now because
But COVID showed us, you know, I think COVID showed us that the world doesn't end by doing this. I mean, I was a supporter of this. I'm happy if we come back and we don't do it electronically. It's not that big of a deal. I do think, at least, I think this is a policy discussion, not a technological decision about how we want to engage the public, local, front range, how we want to engage with each other, in-person mandatory, or the first iteration had like no more than 2 meetings a year, not back to back, you know, some security things, so you can report for, you know, executive session, things like that. And I think Carl probably has that ready to go if we want to address that, and we can bring that up before we come back into council chambers. So I think those are policy decisions for a future work session.
That's kind of what I was thinking as well, but I thought now would be a good time to bring it up.
I love it, Paula. All right. Is there any other comments on this? Deborah or Alyssa, any other?
And I just want to make a real quick.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I just want to make a brief comment. Alyssa, we talk about, we're here all looking here at each other. We don't get to look at you very often, although I know you're always in the background running these meetings. And I would tell you how much I appreciate all the time and energy that not only you put into this presentation, but what you do at each one of our meetings. I really appreciate your time and dedication to listening to us week after week, hour after hour, drone on and on. So thank you very much.
she doesn't actually listen, Charlie. You just make sure that you can hear her.
Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll be back here at 6:15.